The campaign to abolish slavery in the United States had drawn support from all over the world. Abolition was acclaimed as a triumph for all humanity. But soon black Americans would realize that racism had outlived slavery. Near the end of the Civil War, the Northern Union Army had promised 40 acres to each freed slave who would fight the Southern Confederate Army. But the following year, the order was rescinded, and the lands were returned to the white plantation owners of the South, leaving many with no choice but to work for their former masters. They became farm laborers as part of a system known as sharecropping.
The way it worked is that a black family would work for a white landlord for a period of a year. And during that time, the family would receive canned goods, food, a plow, mules, animals, seeds, other implements that were necessary to produce a cash crop, let's say cotton. And the split was half, 50-50, minus the costs that had been incurred during the previous growing season by the black family. And what usually occurred, since the black household did not keep the books, blacks owed more money at the end of the year to white families, and so the debt was rolled over. Blacks essentially never got out of debt.
After the Civil War, the 13th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution outlawed slavery and extended the vote to adult black men. But in the South, these hard-won rights were thwarted.
What they did was to find ways to stop black people from voting. They created literacy tests, basically. They said, or other exams that you had to pass in order to be allowed to vote. And a white person would show up and they would be asked, you know, what country is this? And they would say, United States, go ahead, vote. And then a black person would show up and they'd first of all see if they could read. And if they could read, they would then ask them a question like, what is the third phrase in the First Amendment governing religion? Which, of course, most white people couldn't have answered either.
By the end of the 19th century, the Southern states made it legal to offer so-called separate but equal services to their black citizens. These laws denied black Americans equal access to public amenities, such as education and transport, turning the United States into a racially segregated nation. Soon, millions living in the land of the free found themselves trapped by the Jim Crow system, named after a vaudeville act that ridiculed black people.
The key thing to grasp about the so-called Jim Crow laws is that they were really about enforcing the idea of racial inequality in everyday life. And so there were laws that explicitly governed things like where black people could sit in buses, whether they could stay in hotels, which hotels they could stay in, whether they could eat in the same places, and so on. But also around them was a set of practices of everyday life which were not legally enforceable, but which reflected the very same ideas. So, for example, black people weren't supposed to look white people in the face in the street. I mean, if there was not enough space on the pavement, the black person was supposed to get off. Or in the end, if you looked in the wrong place, if you did what was once called reckless eyeballing, if a black man looked at a white woman in the wrong way, he could end up being lynched.